Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I'm your host, Teri Wellbrock, and super thrilled and excited to learn today from Evan Hirsch, MD. And I'm going to read this wonderful little bio that I have. So Evan has, or I'm going to say Dr. Evan, has nearly 20 years of experience practicing functional and environmental medicine, over a decade of experience in treating chronic fatigue, ME/CFS, MCAS, which I had battled, and you longtime listeners know, and now long COVID, a science-backed and clinically proven four-step process. And so we're going to talk about that, and that's what I'm super excited to learn about. So welcome, Dr. Evan.
Thanks so much for having me on, Terry.
Absolutely. So I know, like I told you before we hit record, that we moved into a house in Hilton Head in 2020, right as the pandemic hit. Um, and within 7 months of moving in, everything was going wrong in my body. I mean, I had 20 different things going crazy. My blood pressure was out of whack. My thyroid was out of whack. I had a rash all over my body. I lost 58 pounds very, very quickly. Long story short, Western medicine struggled to help me. Found my way to a nutritionist who said, I think you might have mycotoxin poisoning from mold. Have you tested your house? And I said, our house is beautiful. It was just rehabbed. And she said, why did they rehab it? And my jaw hit the floor and I said, oh my gosh. Went home, researched, found out the house had been condemned for toxic mold. And so it was in the ductwork, it was behind drywall, it was under the flooring. And so we spent a lot of money to have it um, have teams come in and seal it off and do the thing. So again, I thank you for your work. So can you talk to us about, well, really, I guess let's talk about your four-step process because it helps with all these things, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so the first step is to figure out the causes that people have. So I like to categorize these into deficiencies and toxicities. And so deficiencies are things that are not in the body that are supposed to be there. Deficiencies in hormones, vitamins, minerals, lifestyle habits, mindset. These are all the things that most of the people are going to have experience with if you've gone to see a naturopath, a nutritionist, a functional medicine provider, integrative medicine. And so that's the first step is to figure out what causes that people have. Now, for the people that I see who have chronic fatigue syndrome, they have all of what I call the toxic five. So these are the toxins, which are the other category, toxins and infections. And so this is a combination of heavy metals, chemicals, molds, infections, and nervous system dysfunction. Okay, there's also some structural issues that can be in there, electromagnetic fields. But the big ones really are what I call the toxic five. And so those are really important because those are the ones that are missed. It's the mold, it's the heavy metals, it's the chemicals, it's the infections, it's the nervous system dysfunction that all builds up in people's bodies over time. Because we don't get sick in a day, it's decades of this toxic and infection buildup in the body. And then all of a sudden there's a straw that breaks the camel's back, whether it's COVID, whether it's moving into a moldy home, whether it's getting your mercury fillings out incorrectly, whatever it is. There's some sort of straw that breaks the camel's back, some sort of trigger. And so whenever we're looking at the causes that people have, it's always this combination of the deficiencies and the toxicities, where for us, we're always going to be addressing, with the people that I work with, we're always going to be addressing the toxic five because you cannot get chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID without having all of them. So it's really it's not a question of if, it's a question of how much of each do you have. And so we know we're going to be addressing the toxic five. We know we're going to be addressing adrenal and mitochondrial dysfunction because you can't have chronic fatigue without that and these other weird symptoms that go along with it. But then the question is, what other causes are also present? So we want to put that together in the first step and figure out the causes that people have before we move on to treating those. Any questions on that?
Yeah, yeah, no. And I'm so glad you brought up number five because as someone who has horrific trauma history for my first 22 years of life, I I came to the realization through over the years as we worked on this healing journey that oh my gosh, I had lived in such a state of hyperarousal for so long that my body was just in this weakened, my immune system was in this very weakened state. And so, right, all of these things, like I told you, I have the fillings and looked at getting those removed. Had just, you're right, the mold was the straw that broke the camel's back. So thank you for addressing number five, because I know again, as a trauma survivor, that's such a big part of the puzzle. Yeah.
Yeah, and some people believe that they haven't had trauma. And I believe that everybody has had trauma because there's big T trauma, like really significant abuse and stuff that you don't want to talk about. And then there's little t trauma, which is more like you were a child of imperfect humans, which are called parents, and they're trying to get their needs met in a chaotic world. And then you have siblings who are also trying to get their needs met, right? And so consequently, and you're just trying to get your needs met, and then you're trying to get them met in the context of peers at school, and then teachers, and then you've got relationships and breakups and whatever, right? And these ongoing exposures. So it really is the nervous system dysfunction ends up happening because of stressors. And it is this combination of mental and emotional stressors, but also the physical stressors, which are the other toxic four, the heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and infections that build up in your body over time. So all of those things will cause nervous system dysfunction. So it's just a really important part of the process. And about 6 months ago, we included nervous system retraining as part of our program to make it easier for people to kind of do it congruently while they're going through the rest of the detoxification and removing of the other toxic four.
Awesome. Now, when you say other illnesses in the body, I can't remember the exact word you just said, but are you talking like Epstein-Barr virus, like something that hangs on in your body?
I think that's what I was meaning. So yes, so in terms of the infections, I mean there's
That's
viruses, there's bacteria, there's yeast, there's parasites, there's Lyme disease, like all of those things end up being present in the people that we work with. You cannot get the fatigue without having the system overwhelmed by all of these toxins and infections.
okay. Yes. Thanks for clarifying that. Awesome. All right. Well, again,
So that
I'm just sitting here going, yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's step one, figuring out the causes that an individual has. And then step two, we start off by replacing the deficiencies. So with my emphasis on the toxic five, people might be wondering, well, um, shouldn't we be going after the toxic five? And the answer is yes, but we have to set the stage appropriately. So we go after the toxins and infections in step four, but step two and step three have to set that stage so that we're going to be successful there. Because that's another reason why sometimes people don't have success is because they haven't set the stage properly. So we want to replace the deficiencies in hormones and vitamins and minerals and nutrients and mitochondria and lifestyle habits and mindset is because all of those things are going to make the individual more robust, more resilient, more stable, decreases inflammation, increases energy a tick. There's about 50% of the people we work with, they have an increase in energy, maybe from a 4 out of 10, where 10's ideal, to a 5 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 in the first couple months just by replacing deficiencies when that's done correctly. And then in step three, we start opening up the exit pathways. So in order to get the toxins and infections out in step four, they need a place to go. Essentially, it's kind of like you have a rain barrel. The human body is a rain barrel that is full of stuff. It's full of the toxic five. And we want to drill a hole in the bottom and let the toxins drip out. But they have to have a place to go. Otherwise, they'll kind of build up in the body and go someplace else. So another analogy I like to use is a funnel. So essentially, when we're like dumping these toxins into the detox pathways, the way we get toxins out of the body, liver, kidney, lymph, neural lymph, which is the brain, gallbladder, intestines, all of those are all the skin, those are all ways that we kind of get toxins out of the body. And those pathways have to be somewhat open in order to have success. So if we're using that funnel analogy and we're dumping things into the funnel, the bottom of the funnel needs to be open in order to get the toxins out. So that's kind of like what we do in step three. And everything we do is natural. It's all herbal, vitamins, minerals, all that sort of stuff. And then we go into step four, and that's where we go after removing the toxic five.
Yeah, I'm just so glad. I've never heard it explained so wonderfully because mine was coming out through my skin. I had oh gosh, psoriasis, an autoimmune response when everything. And so we did a biopsy. My regular MD did a biopsy and said, oh, it's psoriasis. Um, and that was the one thing I just couldn't get back under control. All my other labs got back to normal again with taking natural supplements and herbs and some activated charcoal. And we were trying Zeobind and all the things, but just couldn't get that under control. And so, yeah, thank you because people kept telling me, "Oh, you have to open the pathways. You have to open the detox pathways." And I don't know how to do that. Like, what? What do I do? So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, when people, find out that they have some sort of toxin or infection that they want to go after, oftentimes their practitioner is like, okay, this is the treatment that, potentially is going to work, and they forget about step three. So then people have horrific die-off or a Herxheimer reaction where you're killing the infection or trying to remove the toxin. The pathways aren't open. And basically, you're just increasing inflammation in the body because you're killing the infection. The infection is dying. It's releasing its toxins into the body. The immune system is seeing it and reacting and causing the inflammation. I mean, essentially, all of our symptoms come from inflammation. All inflammation is from the immune system's reaction to something. And in general, the immune system is reacting to the toxic five.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you again for that explanation. I know we've had one episode to talk about long COVID. Can you just address that a little bit? Because I know it's still something that's continuing to go on. I saw an article the other day about it. Um, and the article was talking about this is still an issue that's happening with folks.
Yeah, unfortunately. And the official diagnosis, there's no real official diagnosis, but I'll say the unofficial diagnosis is basically you have a viral illness, whether you test positive for COVID or not, because the testing isn't very good. You get a viral illness, and then you get subsequent persistent symptoms. So you may get the virus, and then the symptoms never go away, whether it's fatigue or body pain or brain fog or muscle pain or sleep issues, and those persist, or the symptoms go away, and then a month or two later, or a couple weeks later, all of a sudden the symptoms come back. And oftentimes the symptoms change all the time, where people will say, I'm getting new symptoms. The old symptoms are getting better, but I'm getting new symptoms. So it's kind of this rotation. And essentially what's happening, it just really depends on where in the body COVID or the spike protein has gotten. Because wherever it is, that's where you'll have inflammation. And like I said before, that's where you'll get your symptoms. So if you've got the COVID in the muscles, you're going to get muscle pain. If it gets into the mitochondria, which makes 70 to 90% of our energy, you're going to get fatigue. So, if those symptoms persist longer than 2 months, that's when you can have diagnosable long COVID or post-acute sequelae to SARS-CoV-2, which is the official diagnosis. But that's what we're seeing right now, and we're seeing just an incredibly large amount of people. It's the latest stats are anywhere between 20 and 40% of everyone who has had COVID ends up with subsequent symptoms of some kind. So, since 2020, if you have had any sort of new symptom like sleep issues, muscle pain, fatigue, brain fog, even if all of a sudden it came on in 2023 or 2024 and you didn't really think you had any sort of viral illness, you have to consider that it is long COVID.
Yeah. Now, is there a way to test for it, or is it just you
Yeah.
diagnose this, like listen to the symptoms? Yeah.
Yeah, it's mainly a clinical diagnosis based on your symptoms and based on that history, and oftentimes a diagnosis of exclusion. There are some tests to look at, are there antibodies to the spike protein that are present? But the testing, the ones that I've tried just really haven't been great. For people where, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's
Yeah.
probably a duck, right? So if somebody shows up and they're like, yeah, I haven't really tested for long COVID, but they have a really classic appearance and we treat long COVID and the symptoms go away. It's kind of like a lot of people are being misled by laboratory tests. And I don't do a lot of lab testing anymore, and we can talk about why. But when I lecture to practitioners, I tell them, if you lean too heavy on your lab tests, you're going to fall over because there's a lot of people that you're not serving when you are so reliant on imperfect laboratory tests. And these people come to see me who've been tested up and down, sideways, and they haven't shown up with anything. And then we treat them for things that I know that they have that they haven't tested for, and they get better. It's really unfortunate because if they hadn't found me, they would never potentially have gotten better, or it would have been more
Yes.
challenging, or would take it longer.
Yes, 100%. And almost in the opposite direction too. I remember having all of these lab tests done initially by my Western medicine practitioner, and it was like, oh, your thyroid's out of whack. Here's a pill. Well, they wanted to like, take this. Oh, your blood pressure. Let's get a statin. Here's this. Here's this. Here. And I was just like, hold up. Let's find the root cause. Why are all of these things all of a sudden way out of whack? We're not just going to throw a pill and mask the symptoms. Let's figure out the root cause because again, just relying on lab results instead of looking at the whole picture. Um, yeah, yeah, so critical. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because, I had mentioned, all the causes that we're looking at. We're looking at over 30 different causes in combination with the deficiencies and the toxicities, but 80% of the deficiencies are caused by the toxic five. So when you have hormonal deficiencies, adrenals, thyroid, sex hormones, and I mean, there's obviously menopause in there for a lot of folks too, but those are all going to be caused by chronic stressors, which are the toxic five. If you've got mitochondrial dysfunction, if you have vitamin and mineral deficiencies, there are some genetic components to that, but 80% of the time it's going to be because of the toxic five, right? The lifestyle habits are those components that are not associated with the toxic five. But the rest of them really are. And so you can replace, I tell people you can't replace the deficiencies out of your toxicity. So, you can replace deficiencies till the cows come home, but they're not the real root causes. The real root causes are what's actually causing those deficiencies, So it's really interesting because we go through this process of replacing adrenals and thyroid and mitochondrial function and all that sort of stuff to make people more resilient. But then once we get into step four and we start removing the toxic five, we have to wean them down off of things. We like ramp them up on their thyroid in order to help them feel better. But then we have to wean them down off of it as the thyroid comes back online, as we start removing the infections and the mercury and whatever else is in the thyroid. All of a sudden, they've got too much thyroid on board.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because I've for me, I'm just again, I know my own personal journey and the body, what I've learned is the body's always trying to center itself, right? It's always trying to fix itself. So yeah,
Right.
once you've been like, okay, here's the support we've put in place. Now we've rebuilt the structure, help get it back online. Right, right. To be able to say, all right, you've got it now, body. I believe in you. So
Right. And so there are some people who are like, well, why do that push and pull? Like, why ramp up? And when I say ramping up on thyroid, we're using a thyroid support, glandulars, stuff like that, not prescriptions. But, why ramp up on all of those things in step two if you're just going to fix them in step four? Well, we can do that. We can do that ramp up in step two and replacing the deficiencies in a month and a half, 2 months, but it can take 12 months or longer to get rid of the toxins, right? And you're going to be a lot more successful and it's going to take less time when you replace step two and replace those deficiencies. So, there is a method to the madness, even though sometimes it may not seem as that's the case, especially in this circumstance where there's a little bit of a push-pull.
right. Now, do you work with folks one-on-one? Do you have like a course that people can take, or how do people work through this program?
Yeah, so we only have one offering, which is our program, which is we tell everybody that it takes at least 12 months to get better, but we start everybody off with 6 months, where we take people through a process of a step-by-step curriculum, and then we have one-on-ones, and we have group calls almost every single week, one-on-ones every month, group calls almost every single week. We've got group calls in terms of the deficiencies and the toxicities and the four-step process. And then we also have group calls doing the nervous system retraining. And then we also have a really great community where I guarantee a response in 2 business days to any questions that are posted. And the really one of the most important parts of this program, well, I should say there's a couple pivotal parts. One is you need the initial plan, right? So when people join the program, they fill out an intake form. We provide them with a plan of what they're going to be doing over the next 12 months. The next thing is that they need to, I give them my best guess over the next 12 months based on my experience. But what they really need is me in their back pocket for any questions that they have along the way. This is really where the gold is because everybody is different. And the way to personalize the plan and the program for them is based on how they react to the support. Because essentially, I can say, okay, you do this plan for the next 12 months and it's going to address the toxic five and you're going to be better. But when you increase by a drop and you're starting to remove your heavy metals and you start to feel worse, you need to know what to do. You need to know how to pivot around that. So it's this pivoting process that's really essential. So people post in the community, I introduced this supplement or I increased by a drop. I'm feeling worse. What do I do? I tell them what to do. They do it. They're able to pivot. They're able to keep moving forward. So, I've never met anybody who hasn't resolved their chronic fatigue syndrome or long COVID by addressing all of the toxic five completely. It just hasn't happened in my experience. And so I'm so confident in that I can make that statement. And so it's just all about as long as people are going to implement, we're going to be there all along the way in order to hold their hands, and I've tried to
Yeah,
make it as simple as possible to help them get to the finish line.
beautiful. Well, I applaud you big time because as someone who's hypersensitive to when we would introduce new supplements, I literally would open a capsule and take a sprinkle and put it on my breakfast, my oatmeal and blueberries or whatever it
Right.
was, because I would have those Herxheimer reactions. And so it was so wonderful to have a handle holds to know, oh, this isn't killing me. I'm not going to die from this, but that it was just my body reacting to it. And so, yes, it was wonderful to be able to then just do like, I love that you say it, a drop. Yeah, wonderful.
And sometimes for people who are more sensitive, we have to do topical drops. So we use a lot of alcohol-based tinctures. And so that allows us some flexibility. If people can't tolerate them orally, then they can do them on their hands and like rub them in, and they'll absorb about 20% of a drop. But my trick for helping people with MCAS is really and sensitivities, if people are having a hard time tolerating supplements, is the nervous system retraining. That really is the fastest way that I have found for people to decrease their sensitivities and to make more progress in the program. And so there are times, people will do the nervous system retraining in our program, or I might say, you know what? Why don't you pause our program right now? You're more sensitive than I thought, and go ahead and go do Gupta's program or DNRS or Primal Trust, one of these standalone nervous system, limbic system retraining programs, and do that for 3 months. And let's check back in and see where you're at because you're just going to be a lot more successful in our program when you've done something like that if you have those sensitivities.
Wow. 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 Again, I say yay to you because I went through the Gupta program and still
Nice.
practice it.
Right.
And to me, I do my favorite is the daily 20-minute meditation where it's the soften and flow. And I can hear him in my head, soften and flow. Like I get, and it's wonderful. And I literally, it's become such a part of my routine that, and it helped me tremendously with rebalancing my nervous system, and then being able to, yes, start to clear the toxins and do the things. So I wish I'd have met you earlier. I'd have yeah, been like, all right, let's do this.
Well, and I'm glad that you found that because, that is the least expensive, fastest way, I believe, for most people to get better from these conditions or make significant progress. So for some people, it's 90% of their issue, and then the other 10% are the other toxic four. because this is addressing the nervous system retraining. For other people, it's 10% of the issue, and 90% is the other toxic four. So we really don't know, but because this is a low-cost option, it's really a great place for people to start, and then they come to us if they need the other things addressed as well.
Awesome. Now, do you work with people on their diet and exercise and address that as well?
We do, yeah, and I didn't mention that, and because it's kind of inherent in the work that we do, and also when people come to see us, they've done every diet upstairs, downstairs, back and forth, right? And so, I try to keep it simple, and I tell them what I don't want them to eat. I want them to avoid gluten and dairy and sugar and processed foods, and those are kind of the big ones. So mainly like a paleo diet, but we are flexible. We do work with vegans, this, that, and the other thing, and so. I tell people that it's all about prioritization, right? And what I've found is that the toxic five is the fastest way to get people home. Now, if you address your food adequately and you are living that kind of lifestyle, you are going to get better faster. And there is going to be a point if people are like, I can't really change my diet right now, and I'm like, well, you're going to need to at some point in the program. So just know that that's the case because there's going to be a point at which you're not going to be able to take the next step. And so sometimes they need step two in order to replace those deficiencies in order to have a little bit more energy to be able to make different choices in the kitchen, right? And so we try to support them in that, and that's part of the one-on-one and the coaching that we do.
Yeah, that well, MCAS, that was one of my major symptoms that really I realized, oh, something's really wrong here was the histamine intolerance that I was starting to experience when eating foods and having my throat. I never went into full anaphylactic shock, but my throat was starting to seize. And I was said, and again, Western med was just like, oh, you're having a laryngospasm. Oh, let's put a camera down your throat. Oh, but once I found my way to a naturopath and said, and they were like, "Oh, you're having histamine intolerance, so your bucket's full."
Right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
now I've been able. I did an elimination diet. That was part of the program that I had gone through, and slowly did food introductions back again. And there's certain things I still don't drink alcohol. I haven't had alcohol in 5 years. Really watch my gluten intake, try to eat gluten-free for the 98% of the time. Every now and then I'll have something. But it really has made such a huge difference, yeah, in my life, adding that component to it as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and like you experienced, there's a root cause of that as well, right? And as we talked about, if the immune system is inflammatory, it's like what's triggering it? Well, it's the toxic five, right? And so, yeah, getting the toxic five out of the body completely um, greatly decreases the immune system reactivity, but sometimes you need to hit that reset button, and that's kind of like where the nervous system retraining component comes in. Or for some people, they're utilizing, we coach people a little bit on like the use of psychedelics to help to reset the nervous
Oh.
system. So sometimes you get stuck, and you need some of those things in order to be able to kind of hit the reset button.
Yeah, thanks so much. I weirdly pulled my back out, went to a chiropractor who does kinesiology, if I said that right.
You
Anyway,
do.
and she said, you should really go see this particular acupuncturist. I live on Hilton Head Island, and so this acupuncturist. And so I went, and that was like the missing last little piece. And so you're right. Sometimes it's just like that. You find that thing that's the reset. So I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and acupuncture is another good one too. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You want to
Wonderful.
get more into the parasympathetic because sometimes you're stuck in sympathetic, even if you removed all the toxins and infections out of the body.
Yes, yeah. Well, thank you for clarifying because true, I've heard that and people say the toxins are gone, Teri. The toxins are gone. Like I've had mediums and people who have psychic abilities come on and be like, your body, the toxins are gone. You're just stuck. Like your body's holding on. And that's that trauma response. My
Right.
my body was just stuck in that trauma response to the exposure to the mold. So yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, this has just been so insightful. Thank you for sharing your brilliant wisdom and the healing work you do. I certainly want to give you an opportunity as we close out to maybe touch upon anything we didn't get a chance to talk about or leave folks with any words of wisdom.
Well, I think that the we touched on it a little bit, but the most important next step for people really is doing the mindset work and the nervous system retraining. So if you did one thing, if you took one thing away from this talk, I would say start a gratitude practice. You know, every single day, three things, can be the same three things every day, but just get into the practice of thinking about what you're grateful for, even if you feel like crap. Like find something because that will help to start to retrain the nervous system. So that's a great next step that doesn't cost you a thing.
Yes. Oh, I love it. And I do it every day. And yes, I even put it on my to-do list to do my gratitude, either gratitude journaling or I take mindfulness walks in nature. And it can be so simple as if I see a dragonfly. And so I'll just pause and be like, oh my gosh, thank you for blessing my day. And just, I mean, for me, that's just, it's small, but it's also big. So
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So how do folks work with you? How do they find you and connect with you?
So I'm at energymdmethod.com. That's energymdmethod.com. And you can learn all about who we are there. I'd encourage you to click on the link to watch my latest masterclass. It's 20 minutes long if you listen to it on 2x speed. And you'll kind of go deep into more of these concepts. But if you feel like you resonate with me and you want to see whether or not we can help you, you can click on the link below that masterclass video, get on a free call with me. We'll go for about 45 to 60 minutes, and I'll go through a process of assessing kind of like where you're at, see if we're a good fit to work together. If I feel like we are, I'll say yes. And if you want to learn about more about the program and how it's structured and all that, we can go into that. But about a third of the people I get on these call with, I say, you know what, I don't think that we're a good fit to work together because I want to make sure that you're not wasting your time, your energy, your money, that, we're only working with people who we believe we can get to the finish line. So I try to be really authentic and I pride myself on my integrity when it comes to all of that. So that's a possibility. And then we also have a lot of free stuff on the website too. If you want to take our long COVID quiz to see if you have COVID, if you want to check out our 4-step mindset practice, that's on there as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, this has been just such a delight. Thank you for joining me and the beautiful work you do.
Thanks so much for having me on, Terry.
All right. Well, everyone, I will put links in the show notes. So if you just want to scroll down and click on links, that will all be there. And thank you for joining us today on the Healing Place podcast. And remember, until next time, be gentle with yourself. Thanks. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. Teri Wellbrock here. Just wanted to thank you again for being a part of this healing space and my hashtag Hope for Healing journey. Thank you for sharing, liking, inviting others to join, listening in. You've really helped this show blossom. It has now been downloaded in 136 countries and is in the top 2% globally out of 3.2 million shows, which is just amazing. And it's all because of you and your tuning in and inviting others and sharing and liking and loving. And your reviews on Apple really help too. My goal is to hit 100 5-star reviews by the end of the year. And I am closing in on that. So if you are listening in on Apple or Apple Podcasts, please go and rate the show and leave a review if you absolutely love it. And I would be most appreciative. Also, if you would like to receive my monthly Hope for Healing newsletter, please be sure to go to teriwellbrock.com. It's Teri, just one R, WELLBROCK.com. And I have a gift to send you for signing up for that monthly Hope for Healing newsletter. Plus, there are many other resources listed on that page, including a resource library. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.